Hey everybody, so I'm going to cook a lean and green, and it might be a little rough. It's the first time I'm doing this, but I'm going to try to edit it as best I can, and hopefully it's smooth. So this is going to be my low carb lasagna, and here it goes. So it calls for 10 ounces of ground beef. I have 17 ounces, pound point 12. So I'm going to make my recipe 1.5. Okay, so I'm going to use my Pampered Chef chop and grind or whatever it's called to brown the meat. I'm just browning it on medium, and I just want to get it to the point where it is not pink anymore. But I'm going to bake this in the oven when I assemble it, so I don't want to dry it out because this is very lean. I think this is 96.4. So there's not a lot of fat in it, and I didn't put any oil in the pan. It's just a non-stick pan, okay? So that's the first step. Okay, so that took about 3 or 4 minutes, and the pink is almost gone. So remember, I'm doing 1.5 recipes. This recipe calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, so I'm gonna use 1/2. I'm doubling it. And it calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to do just a little more than that, but not too much. And the same for pepper, but I'm going to go heavy on the pepper. I like it like that. Okay. And I'm bringing it to a simmer, and I'm going to add, calls for 1 cup of plain tomato sauce. You can use Rouse if you're on program. If not, you can use any tomato sauce you want. This is mine. I'm doing 1.5 cups. Okay. So once I have all that tomato sauce in, I'm going to bring this to a simmer, and I'm going to simmer it for about 2 minutes just to get everything seasoned, okay? And then we'll come back and put it together. So now I'm going to make the cheese mixture. I'm going to use skim ricotta, low-fat Parmesan shredded, low-fat mozzarella. I'm going to use some egg beaters, a little garlic powder, salt, pepper, Italian seasonings. That's it. But if you see here, I have my scale. I'm going to weigh everything, not measure. The recipe calls for 4 ounces of ricotta. I'm going to do 6 ounces of ricotta because I'm doing a recipe and 1/2. And I always measure. You get so much more when you measure. The recipe calls for 6 ounces of skim or low-fat mozzarella, but 3 of those are going to be the top, so I'm going to do about 5 ounces, maybe a little more. That's the pound of mozzarella. A lot of cheese, trust me. This makes 2, 3, 5 or 6 servings. I'll check. So I'm going to do 5 ounces of mozz. There it is. The other 3 ounces will go on top. And it calls for 1/4 cup of the parm. It's about 2 ounces. So I'm going to do about 3 ounces. It's a little shy. I'll live. 2 tablespoons of egg beaters. 1. This is just a binding agent. It's essentially nothing. Egg beaters. I'm going to use a teaspoon of Italian seasonings, and I'm going to use, it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of garlic, but I go heavy on the garlic. We've discussed before. So I'm going to do a little more than 1/2 of the garlic, because garlic can be a little bitter. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of Italian seasonings. Gonna double. And a little salt and pepper. And then I'm gonna give this a good mix, and then we will come back and we will assemble everything together, okay? Okay, so we're gonna take the simmered ground beef and we're gonna put it into our sprayed pan. You can use a casserole dish. I use a throwaway because I portion this out when I'm done. I don't keep it in here, so I just bake it in there. And then this is the cheese mixture. You can see ricotta, mozzarella, parm, and some seasonings, a little egg beater. I like to use an ice cream scoop. Why? Because that's just the way I am. So I like to scoop this evenly onto the ground beef. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. But this way, when it bakes, it melts really nicely and it covers everything. And you have to remember that this makes 6. A regular recipe makes 4, so I did 1.5. So that makes 6. And then I'm just gonna top it off with some mousse, about 2 ounces. For me, that's about 2 small handfuls, but you know, when you make it as many times as I do. Okay, and this is gonna go into the oven for 40 minutes. 40? Yep, 40 minutes at 350, and this makes 6. So I'm just gonna kind of cut it up as a pie. It's not gonna be thick like a pie, so I'm just gonna scoop it out. Sometimes I weigh it, but since I'm transitioning now, I'm not so worried about whether I get an exact 6. But if you're on program, you can weigh it out, or you can put it in more of a rectangular shape if you want, so you can divvy it up, whatever floats your boat. Okay, we'll come back when it's done. Okay, so it's been just 40 minutes and the timer just went off. Let me show you what it looks like. So after 40 minutes, this is 6 servings. You can see how the ricotta mozzarella all kind of melted over the top. And I'm gonna let it set. It gets a little hard, you know, a little firm, and easier to serve. Yeah, so let me know if you make it.